I have like 20 things rattling around my brain right now. So what that inevitably means is that I'm like just kind of unfocused and like not sure what I'm like thinking about or what have you. Question. Did anyone who watches my channel watch this week's episode of Drag Race All Stars? Do you watch Drag Race? Do you watch All Stars? I am a huge fan of All Stars and Drag Race, obviously, but like, you know, this being All Star season, I'm watching all of it. Okay. Here's the thing. I'm not doing Drag Race reviews anymore. I do kind of miss them, I'll be honest, but that's not what this channel is. However, I do feel like this season of All Stars has been very strange to me. I don't know what it is, but something just has felt weird. I cannot put my finger on it, but I know everyone else has been feeling it too, because everyone's been talking about like that this season is kind of lackluster. And I have to be honest, like I have felt that. It's just, I don't want to say lackluster because I've been watching every episode, but it's just not felt as dynamic. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because, you know, they followed up the all winners season with this. And so it's kind of like, okay. But it's just, I don't know. It's been a lot of just weird choices and just weird dynamics. Like just something is off in the vibe of this season. This particular episode, I do want to talk a little bit about just in the front, not to like talk about the season, but just to talk about this episode because it was making over Butches. Now, well, two Butches and then more of a, you know, femme presenting person. Now, when I first saw that this was the challenge, I was a little, just for the sheer fact of like, I know we always talk about it, you know, I certainly talk about it. Butches are just so often kind of forced into femininity and expected to be feminine all the time. Like that's, you know, even though that's not what they do, that's not their thing, there is this idea of like, even amongst lesbians, and this is like the actual like greater point I want to talk about in this video, but even amongst lesbians, butches are so often like expected to try and be more feminine and more palatable, which is something that like really pisses me off if I'm being honest with you. So when I was watching this, I was kind of like, oh God, you know, like, I mean, I appreciate that you're representing lesbians and you're representing this community because we're so often not appreciated. And I like that they were saying that lesbians are the backbone of our community and all these things, which I think are true. But at first I was like, I don't know. I don't like the idea of making these drag queens or these butches into drag queens. Like drag kings, great, but like making them feminine just felt very iffy to me that they chose butches specifically, or at least two butches specifically. But then when I was watching it, I did come to appreciate that, like, okay, you know, you got to think these people kind of, I would assume to a certain extent, knew what they were getting themselves into. If they've watched Drag Race at all, they kind of know how these makeover challenges go. I assume they told them what they were coming in for. Like, I would not imagine that they would be like, yeah, so you're coming in to film this, you know, little segment. We're not going to tell you what it's for. I don't know. Maybe that's how Drag Race operates, but it seems like they're, you know, from what I can see, I actually found and followed one of them, 3 Guesses for You Who, on Instagram. And it seems like, you know, they very much knew what they were getting themselves into. So it was very much on their own terms. And I can appreciate that. I can appreciate someone wanting to explore, you know, gender and drag and presentation on their own terms. I certainly, for myself, when I first kind of started getting into makeup and first like thought about wanting to do drag, I was like, before my transition, I was always like, oh God, I gotta do like super femme presenting, like girly girl drag. And now that I am a woman, I'm like, you know what? I can actually just do whatever I want. Like if I'm gonna do like a draggy look, I want to go full like clown fantasy. That's what I do. Like I'm under no delusion of what I would consider my aesthetic to be, and it's full clown. Like move over Bianca Del Rio. The clown is here. That's just, that is what it is. And I don't have a problem with that whatsoever. I feel like I'm kind of serving a little bit of Trixie vibes with this hair. Maybe like delusional. Anyway, so I was like, at first I was kind of like, but now once I watched the episode, I really did appreciate it. And I appreciated that we got to hear the stories of, the two Butches, especially, because we so seldom get to hear Butches talking in their own words on TV, especially on a show as big as Drag Race. Like, let's be honest, this is one of the biggest reality competition shows in the world right now. And it's amazing, and it's so, so, so important. And I'm just so happy that these Butches were featured. And I really, really enjoyed the episode. I really, really enjoyed Candy getting to talk about her mother being Butch. I was like, good for her. I love that. Listen, any Butch representation on television, I love. And especially on a show like Drag Race. I really, really love it. I love the representation. I think we need more representation. I would love to see obviously I'd love to see a drag king on the show. I think we just need more Butch appreciators on the show. I certainly would love to be that Butch appreciator. Listen, if I, by some miracle, get onto a show like Drag Race in any capacity, you can bet I will be talking about Butches nonstop. Nonstop. That is 100% my goal and my promise to you. I know a lot of queens have said over the years that lesbians are the best audience, which I think that's sweet, and I love that. Yeah, that's kind of my thoughts about the episode. I'm not again, this is not a review channel anymore. Let me say anymore. I did do Drag Race reviews once upon a time. I do kind of miss them. I thought about doing it again. I don't know. I know the fandom can be very toxic. I have been so fortunate to have received quite a few really lovely comments from Butches and studs who have found my channel and who have felt really, seen in my videos, to which I can only say thank you so much. Your comments have meant the absolute world to me, and it's really, really made me feel so good and very much okay, this work means something and it has an effect. I don't know. It's easy to get in your head, right? I'm not going to complain. I'm very, very blessed, and I'm just going to say that. But in also saying that, I have also kind of heard from these Butches and studs just kind of their experience of not always feeling seen and not always feeling appreciated by the community, especially Femme presenting lesbians. And it just breaks my heart so incredibly much. You cannot even imagine how much these stories are heartbreaking to me and to other femmes that I personally know. The femmes that I interact with and speak to on a daily basis, every time I've shown them these comments, have been oh my God, the first thing they say is oh my God, that's so sweet. And also, oh my God, that's so devastating. It's sweet and devastating. Because I really, truly, for me, I want Butches to feel seen and adored and loved always. Not just, yes, obviously that's why I make the content I do, but ideally, you should always feel that way. You should always feel seen and adored and loved and appreciated. And especially in your community, in, the community that I am particularly in, there is also a lot of Butch representation, a lot of Butch appreciation. That's something I don't want to say, I guess I've taken it for granted, because I'm so much obviously I'm a part of Butch Femme community on Tumblr, but also on Instagram. And so because I am surrounded constantly by people who love and appreciate Butches and studs and who are, part of the community. So of course you would hope they're going to be supportive and loving and appreciating. And so I take for granted the fact that if you're new to this community and if you don't know where to find the community, it can be very, very difficult. And I was very fortunate because I was already on Tumblr when I realized I was a lesbian and into Butches. And so I already knew, like, okay, well, this is how you find people who, you know, are about what you're about. Like, you go through tags and you follow people who are like-minded and who are interesting to you. And that's how you know, get to know people in the community, and you start becoming friends with them and talking to them. And that's how you make all of these friendships and relationships and things like that. You just have to like put yourself out there, basically. But you have to know where to go for the community, because I mean, I feel like the community definitely exists everywhere, but I've definitely been able to find the Butch Femme community on Instagram and Tumblr. But I don't know, like, I would assume the community has to exist on, like, you know, obviously TikTok is kind of where I first saw Butches. I don't know what the community is like on TikTok because I'm not really there. For me, I found community, I feel like, relatively easily, all things considered, when it came to online. But then I was already in spaces online like Tumblr. It can be very, very hard to know, like, where do you go? Where do you meet people? Where do you come to find that community? I feel like I got a little off track here with what I was originally going to say, which was it's so devastating to me. Wow. Oh, this Trixie blush is on its last rope. Okay, hold on. It's so devastating to me to hear really shitty experiences that they so often have within the community, and especially within the lesbian community. It's so devastating to me and so upsetting. And, you know, it makes you realize, like, it's so important to do whatever you can to make people feel included and appreciated. That's why I make the content I make, to be honest. And that's why I find it so important to talk about Butches constantly, because I know how unappreciated they are in the outside, you know, outside of the internet often, and how difficult it is. And I personally too, I do feel as though I have quite a bit in common with Butches as a trans woman, who so often, when you're told, like, this is the gender you are, this is how you're supposed to present. And I certainly know how it felt to grow up being told, oh, you're too much of this thing and it's not what you should be doing. You know, I personally was always very, very feminine and very, very girly. I preferred girl things. I preferred Barbies and dolls and easy bake ovens. And that was frowned upon by members of my family. I was always too emotional and girly and, you know, effeminate, basically. And I know how it feels to be told, you're doing this wrong, basically. You know, you're doing your life and yourself wrong. Even though you're just being yourself, you're just being who you are, people are telling you you're doing it wrong. I know so many Butches who were forced into femininity as young people because that's the expectation. Like, oh, you're a girl, you have to act like it and look like it and, you know, wear these girly things. And it's just, it is so very frustrating. I know how that feels to, like, be told, yeah, you're doing this wrong, so you need to fix that. You need to change everything about yourself so you can fit in with what everyone else has decided your life is. Like, it's so important to me to show as much love and appreciation for Butches as I can, because I know that at the end of the day, they don't receive enough of it in the world. They just don't. I try and change that on my little corner of the internet. I feel very, very fortunate that it does seem as though that is seen and that is heard and that is appreciated. That means the absolute world to me. And yeah, I don't know. I try not to get like model in here. I'm very, very appreciative. Any opportunity where we can see and recognize each other and like help each other feel seen and recognized and loved. And, you know, everything that I do is meant to be a love letter to Butches. That is like my entire brand. Like, obviously I'm doing my daily love letters, but like every video, every like thing that I have done for the last few years, I feel like has been very much a love letter to Butches and Studs and how much sapphic masculinity means to me. So I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you for everyone who, you know, appreciates my work, but also thank you to everyone who is just visible and themselves. And I adore you, and I just need you to know that, because it just means the world to me to get to see you and witness Butches and Studs doing their thing. And yeah, I feel like I'm gonna get emotional talking about this. I encourage you to seek out community who appreciates you and who sees you and who makes you feel like you are adored and, you know, so lovable and so important, because you are. And I just want you to know that. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to hit that like button, comment down below, tell me, well, tell me if you're watching All Stars and how you felt about that field. Tell me how you felt about that episode and the inclusion of Butches, the way that they did it. Were you a little iffy like me in the beginning of like, oh, like, you know, why do they have to make them into drag queens? Or were you on board right away? Also, subscribe to this channel if you want to see more videos like this. Please feel free to follow me over on Patreon. That is my members only channel where I make specialty videos. Until next time, stay devilish.